WMEL.
That's the sound of the 1951 Ford Victoria Hot Rod, fully restored and donated from the private collection of A.J. Hires. It's the 2017 Win the Classic Ford Car Raffle to support Helping Seniors of Brevard. You have to see this car. I'm Kerry Fink, and I'm inviting you to visit helpingseniorsofbrevard.org for full information on this exciting car raffle. That's helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Stay tuned for more info on the Talk to Me radio network. We're glad that WMEL cares about the space and Treasure Coast.
The views expressed on the following program are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and are not necessarily those of WMEL staff, management, or advertisers.
Joe Steckler, folks, your host for Helping Seniors, the radio arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. We have radio shows, television shows, newspaper columns, magazine columns. Everything we do is designed to reach out to the public so that people are better informed, better educated, and are able to connect to services that they need in Brevard County. Sometimes we don't even realize and think about the types of services that seniors need. And my panelist today, Joe Roth of Veterans Realty, has got some questions he's going to answer for us today that you may want to get a pencil and paper while I'm talking and just think about. You might want to write some questions down because you might want to call him, and I'll give you his phone number later on in the show. But this program is brought through by our sponsors. Joe is one of the sponsors, but organizations like the Eye Institute, Dr. Lee Sheldon, Bill Johnson, Elder Attorney, this radio station, is on Beachside, Riverview Resort area, Brevard Chiropractic, Market Street, Memory Care. There are just a whole slew of organizations that connect with people, mostly in providing senior services of some type that most of us need to know about someday. And in fact, one of the biggest things that we're finding is that there's so many misconstrued ideas about home care, about assisted living, about nursing homes, where people should go, when you should move into a different home, or when you should buy a home, or when you should sell your home. And Joe will talk about that a little bit today. But, I always said that when I started this show 17 years ago, that every time I got a good tip about something, I'd pass it on. Well, most of us, and I'm assuming that most of you listening to the show are bothered like I am at home by people calling all the time. They just always seem to get into our private space at the wrong time. They call when you're eating supper. They call when you're trying. I understand they got to earn a living just like everybody else, and some of them are forced into these calling market circuit things. But on the way up to the show today, my wife was with me, and she got a phone call on the cell phone, and she answered, and this guy said, hello, this is Ray, and she could hear all these people in the background talking, and she says, just a minute, you're on WMEL Talk Radio, go ahead, please. And with that, it was complete silence on the air. Now, I don't recommend that you use WMEL, but just remember, all radio stations, to my knowledge, start with a W. So make up your own call sign for your house. And when somebody calls, just say, this is WGBF or WHAS or WLLC, Talk Radio, you're on the air. Go ahead. See if they stay with you and see if they call you back. So this is just something it's a good tip, because we see things in the paper all the time where people are talking about, how do I get rid of these nuts calling me and disturbing me all the time? Try it. You might like it. At least there was quiet on the phone. So with that thought, welcome, Joe. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Joe. It's good to be here.
Well, it's always glad to have you. And I always remember the first time Joe and I really met, I think it was the first time when we were going to do a TV show. Was right?
Yeah.
And we're about 10 minutes in the show, and I said, I can't do this. And I ended up in the emergency room, and I had all kinds of problems. I don't know what the heck it was, but I'm much better today than I was that day, Joe, so I'm not going to do that to you today. I'm going to stick right with the radio show. But, folks, Joe has got Veterans Realty, and we've done 3 or 4 radio shows over the last year about good things that you need to know about your real estate agent or your agency that's handling your purchase of a home or your sale of a home. And I was telling Joe that I saw in a paper this morning where the Brevard population now has increased from 544,000 to 568,000 people. And Joe, what did you tell me you thought you remembered the number when you were a little boy?
I recall a number of 27,000 people in Brevard County.
That's a long.
Yeah, well, I'm dating myself here.
Well, it's not. And in your case, in my case, I could say I would be dating myself, but in your case, I say it's attributed mostly to rapid growth.
Yes.
Because I think I got you about 20 years.
Possibly by 20 years, yes.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Joe, if you have somebody just ask you a question, and not thinking about the questions you and I want to talk about today, but just off the wall, what if I ask you, and I said, Joe Roth, what is the most misconstrued thought people have about real estate agents? What would you answer?
Real estate agents?
Misconstrued thought.
That they just want to make money. The truth is, our job is to make sure that real estate is a sound investment and that it's all the time increasing in value.
That's a good answer. But it's also, before another question that came up in my mind as I read what you had sent to me. How often do real estate agents get involved with customers that it might be in their best interest if they took a reverse mortgage out instead of selling their home, that they stayed in their home? Do you encounter that?
In some cases, for some people, it works very well. It's not the best situation for everybody, but for some people, it's a godsend.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying, because throughout the theme of what Joe and I are going to talk about today, you're going to see the value of education, mostly continuing education, that good real estate agents will continue to stay alive in the market and study because, so many types of work that we, people that represent an organization that we come across as we live our lives, people go to school and then they sort of stop going to school. They don't continue staying abreast of what the changes are. But a real estate agent does that. That's probably one of the quickest ways to kill himself, isn't it?
Well, we do have to have continuing education every 2 years. But on top of that, there's different designations that we can go for that will help the buyer, the seller, the general public to not get themselves in trouble, and to protect the public in ways that just getting your real estate license just doesn't prepare you enough for. Continuing education is very important for a realtor to maintain his business.
Okay. What I would like to do is I'm going to try and go down through this list of questions, because if we can get through these questions, I think you'll see way we've tried to channel the show today to help you become a better informed listener about what real estate agents can do for you, and conversely, what you can do to help real estate agents sell your property. So, or help you purchase the right kind of property, because I think that's what Joe was sort of hinting at when he gave his answer. But Joe, yourself, what is your experience in your education? When you talked about continuing education and taking continuing classes, what is a good real estate, in your opinion, what does a good real estate agent do?
Well, of course, a good real estate agent goes for the continuing education. Between my wife and myself, we have over 40 years experience in real estate. And one of the highly coveted designations is the Graduate Real Estate Institute designation, and I have that designation.
Okay. And how many books have you written on real estate?
6 or 7 now. I don't count them. I just put them out there.
Well, it's serious. You can go in the days when we had phone books that were 3 inches thick that weighed 10 pounds and had yellow pages in them, and not what you got. You can't even find a phone book today. But when you really had yellow pages, you could look in there and probably doctors, lawyers,
attorneys,
yes. They comprised the largest listings of anybody was there. And I don't think that real estate agents were too far behind. There were a lot of real estate agents listed. But the average person just going into the Yellow Pages, why is that not a good idea?
For the average person?
Yeah, for the average person. Why is it not just to shop Yellow Pages?
That's taking a shot in the air. It's you need to interview several realtors before you hire one. Remember, they're going to be dealing with one of your largest investments, and they're going to be helping you. And these people are going to be in your home, and they're going to be working with you. You want to make sure it's a good fit for you and your property.
A question: we didn't have this listed. Are real estate agents bonded?
Bonded is not exactly bonded. We are licensed through the state. I hadn't heard that term used as being bonded.
Well, what reason let's say if we have a home health care agent that comes into a house, they're bonded in case something happens. The company's bonded, and if something is stolen.
Oh well, yes, we have liability insurance in the form of errors and omissions insurance.
Okay, but that's what I was getting at. Like, you're a full-time professional.
Yes.
And that's because I was going to ask him if it's your full-time job, because why is it important to get a real estate agent first that it is their first full-time job?
Well, if you get somebody that's just doing part-time, they can only give you part-time assistance with your property. Full-time means that that's their number one priority in their job is real estate. You don't want somebody that, sure, a part-timer could sell or list a home just fine, but you want somebody that's going to give their job their full attention.
I remember when we bought, I guess it was the first home we purchased was in Auburn, Alabama, and that was in the days of the 16% real estate mortgage
That was a while
rate.
ago.
That was terrible. And real estate, we bought a home for $120,000. It was 120 or 135, one of the two. I think it was 120. And on a lake, brick, gorgeous. I mean, it had like 4 bedrooms and a mother-in-law suite with a separate bathroom, living room, dining room, kitchen, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. I mean, it was out in the country. It was really, we called it the country. It was really nice. But we got a real estate agent, and we tried to sell that house, and we actually sold it for less than we paid for it.
Ouch.
And it took us a year to do it. I was up in Columbus, Ohio, with a major recruiting command, Terry State in Auburn, Alabama, to sell a house. But I'll think to this day it was because we took a real estate agent that had been a retired naval officer that I'm not sure he really knew what he was doing, and some of the things that Terry saw him do probably convinced us that he didn't really know. He didn't do his job like you talk about it on the radio.
Well, you've got every right to fire your realtor.
But it's hard to do.
No, it's not. Not when it involves your one of your largest investments in your life, and it's your money. If you see a problem, you've got every right and reason to.
Well, what kind of expectations? Let's say in a market that we have today, it is a buyer's market today, right?
It is, yes.
And
well, actually, let me correct that. It's really more of a seller's market right now. The inventory is very low.
You're right.
We're not making too many more homes in this general area here, and we've got a lot of high-paying jobs coming into the area with the Space Center and the port upgrades, and they're growing in leaps and bounds. There's a lot of high-paying jobs coming into the area. We basically have no east to work with in the way of real estate. Nobody's living on out in the ocean, so we've got very limited inventory. So it's really more of a seller's market right now.
Okay, but I think one of the help me on this question. When I talk to you about the real estate, and I look at the questions, and I look at some of the things, try to make a determination as to what type of an agent or who to go with. Perhaps you could explain to the listeners why we should go with people that have experience, why it's a full-time job. We have to think about how much they know about an area that you want to purchase or sell a home in.
Yes, correct.
Do you want to get a real estate agent that is going to work long distance for you? I think that'd be one of the dumbest things you could do.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too smart, having them work long distance. They really couldn't service you as well as they should.
So what is the good housekeeping stamp of approval for a realtor? And how does old Joe Doe's guy like me, how does he know who to pick for a realtor?
Well, first of all, Joe, you're going to interview several people to be your realtor. Most people know 3 or 4 realtors firsthand, but some people don't want their friends to know their personal business, which is understandable. Your question is, how should you pick a realtor? Again, you should interview them, several realtors, to make sure that you're on the same page as they are as to what your goals are with your property. And basically, they should be asking you a lot of questions, and you should be asking them a lot of questions.
Well, the area I live in, I look at sales of comparable size houses, and I don't always see. I say a 3,000-foot house compared to a 4,500-foot house. If you try to do the pricing by square foot, I don't always see it. It doesn't always equal out.
No, it doesn't always work out that way, Joe. There's a lot of different aspects of a house. There's the age, the square footage. When was the last time the property was upgraded? Are there new appliances, such like that? How old's the roof? What's the general neighborhood like? The condition, the overall condition of the house.
Well, most guys that are going to answer that question that you just asked, what a condition of a house upgrade, most of the guys I know, most of their wives are always asking them to upgrade this or upgrade that or change that. They want something fixed, something repaired, something made state of art. And I would be a dead duck if I mentioned names. I can't do that, but I can sure think of a lot of ladies that want new bathrooms.
Looking at you right now.
Yeah. They want all this stuff because they think you got to have it in the house. Of course, to me, if the front door opens and closes and it shuts and you can lock it at night, that's pretty good.
Oh, come on, Joe. You got to do better than that for her.
Hey,
she's
look,
a pretty lady. You got to take care of her better than that, Joe.
Yeah. Hey, look, if you look at these movies like Crown of Thrones and all these things, you look at these barns that these people live in, every one of those barns, not one of the slats matches against the other. It's always light to those things, even in the winter
most of us aren't living in barns, Joe.
I know that. But seriously, do you find customers that over-expect in what they can get for their money or what they should be able to get for their money?
Yeah, sometimes people have, they look at things with rose-colored glasses, and there is reality that has to set in at some point. The first thing, if you're going to be buying a property, you need to make sure that you're pre-approved. Either you have the funds at the bank to be looking for in the price range that you're looking, or that the bank is going to lend you that money. So a pre-approval letter is, before you go out and look at houses, you need to have that pre-approval letter in hand.
Well, how do you go? What is this pre-approval letter based on? How do you go about getting that? Do you take that with you from where you live to where you're going to move?
Well, there's a lot of factors in it. Your credit, your income, and the bank wants to make sure you're going to be able to pay for this house that you're buying. Actually, it's the bank that's buying it.
Yeah, that's right.
So they want to make sure you're going to be able to make the payments, Joe.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, you got to do that.
And also, if you're selling your house, you want to make sure that whoever's looking at it has that pre-approval letter or a bank proof of funds before you even show it to them.
I don't think I've ever heard of this thing called pre-approval letter. I've not heard that term used before in all the houses that we've rented or sold or bought or anything. What exactly is a pre-approval letter?
Well, it's not going to factor in so much on a rental, Joe, but a pre-approval letter is a letter basically from a lender that's saying that based on your income, your credit history, and what it is you're looking for, that you'd be able to afford to buy this house, and you wouldn't be ending up in foreclosure quickly.
You know, one thing that happens, and I'm sure you must encounter this as one of the top sellers in the area, that you get people that have had a bad experience with somebody with identity theft or fraud of some kind, where they have made good money. They live in a beautiful home, but they want to sell their home and buy someplace else. But maybe a family member, somebody has put them across the breakers with a credit card purchase they didn't even know about, and all of a sudden they check a credit rating and they find there's a problem. How do you get around things like that?
Well, Joe, that has precluded a lot of people from being able to buy a home. It's a scary thing that happens, but you need to stay on top of your credit all the time. Make sure that nobody's messing around with you or your credit cards.
If a person has never been in debt, have always paid their bills and can demonstrate those kind of things, is it possible for somebody to overcome somebody getting them in trouble with the credit card? And just a question I think a lot of people have, because it's happening more and more.
It can be overcome. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes some work, but you can overcome it.
But it is something that, and you do come across something like this, don't you?
Not so much my aspect of it. That's more the lenders.
Oh, okay.
That's more the lenders area, but it does happen to some people, yes.
Okay. Before, when I asked about the good housekeeping seal of approval, and one of the things I could have asked you is if you're a member of the National Realtor Association. That's kind of like the good housekeeping seal of approval, isn't it?
Yes, there's being licensed as a real estate agent, and then there's being a realtor. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Okay. The last question I'll ask you, if I hear the music, we could talk a couple seconds. But what is the normal price range of the homes, or the highest price range that you've sold? Well, we'll hold that thought. We'll pick that up after the break, folks, because we'll get into some specifics about buying and selling of a house, price range, and how you should try to pick your realtor, and why it's important that the realtor knows the area. So stay with us.
That's the sound of the 1951 Ford Victoria Hot Rod, fully restored and donated from the private collection of A.J. Hires. It's the 2017 Win the Classic Ford car raffle to support Helping Seniors of Brevard. You have to see this car. I'm Kerry Fink, and I'm inviting you to visit helpingseniorsofbrevard.org for full information on this exciting car raffle. That's helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Stay tuned for more info on the Talk to Me radio network. We're glad that WMEL cares about the space and Treasure Coast.
This is Joe Steckler, your host. We're back live for the second part of the show, folks. I didn't have my earphones on, and I apologize. Gary was talking to me through the window glass there, and I didn't see him. I get so interested in talking to Joe about actually the subject of real estate. And Joe brought it out as we started this show was. It's one of the biggest investments you make in your life, and buying and selling real estate. So it really behooves people listening to the show today to think about what Joe is talking about, because there's good advice about what you should do and what you should not do. One of the things we have a bunch of things we wanted to talk about, but one of the things is a question that Joe has said here, which. I think people, when you hear a guy like Joe Roth talk, what areas do you primarily work in, Joe? Because if we're going to talk specifics, let's say, okay, what area do you really work in?
Primarily Central Brevard. That's Cocoa Beach, Merritt Island, Satellite Beach, Cocoa.
So you're familiar with the waterfront and inland both.
Oh yes.
So. And why is that important? That when you go to pick a realtor, why is it important that you should get a realtor that understands the broad range of what you're trying to do?
Well, let's just say, for example, that you want to buy a house on the river, and a typical realtor that hasn't sold homes on the river wouldn't think to have the bulkhead inspected, the seawall inspected. that could be a very costly prospect if the seawall needed repairs and you weren't aware of that. Or if you wanted to buy a home with a pool and you didn't have a pool inspection. Or conversely, if you wanted to sell a property that had different features of being waterfront or have a pool or have some feature that was very sought after, but the agent didn't know how to sell that, didn't know how to point out the great aspects of the property.
We're talking about marketability here.
Basically, yes.
And appearance, first impressions are one of the most important. So how do you advise the people that you take on as a client on the importance of first appearance for the property to a potential buyer?
Well, first impressions from the point of a seller are very important, but first impressions from a buyer's point is this might look really good, but let's have an inspection first before we go any farther. First impressions, for instance, I showed a house to a couple the other day, and it was big and grand and had a pool, but truly it just wasn't right for them. They had a newborn, and there were aspects about the pool that just didn't work.
Safety-wise, you mean?
Safety-wise, it was a very large property. It was going to be their first house, and it was at the maximum of what they'd be able to afford. And I had to suggest to them, let's take another look at this, take an objective look at it, and is this the right house? And they came to their own decision that, no, this isn't the right house for them.
Did you find a house for them?
We're working on that, Joe.
I would imagine that anybody that would have a realtor say to them or point out to them some of the faults of the home compared to what he thought that they might want to have later as they lived in the home, I would think that would make a realtor much more acceptable to that potential, to the people that they wanted to have them represent.
Joe, sure, I'd love to sell you a house, but if it's not the right house for you, I don't want you buying that house.
Well, you're going to have a bunch of people that are going to think about, Joe Roth, well, he put me in his house, so I'm not really that happy about it. But on the other hand, if they got Joe Roth put me in his house and I'm really happy with it, I'm sure you get a lot more positive recommendations.
Well, I do have quite a list of people that I could give you their number, and you can call them and ask how we did for them.
Do you know offhand how many clients you're representing right now?
Right now, in the way of listings, I have to think for a second. We don't usually have too many listings at one time. I believe we have 3 listings right now that are active on the market. We've got several that are contingent that have contracts on them, and we've had quite a few sales in this last year. And we're also working with several buyers. That list is quite extensive, the buyers that we're working with.
Yeah, but what that means, Joe, what it means to me, and this is what I want you to answer my question. What it means to me is that you make it a priority to go out and see what is on the market, because you know the properties that you're representing. And if a good realtor knows more about all the properties that are on the market, he has a potential client, he can tell right away whether you're going to know right away whether you have a listing that's going to be what that person wants after they sit down and talk to you. But if you can put them in something very quick, it's much best chance to get a sale.
Well, that's called product knowledge, Joe. And what some people are looking for, though it might not be available today, in the coming days or weeks, somebody might want to sell a property that this person is looking for. And we get what we call a hot sheet. Every day we look at the new properties that come up on the market, and we match those with the buyers that we have.
Okay. So after all we're talking about, you market the Cocoa Beach, Merritt Island area,
Satellite Beach, Rockledge, yes.
Okay. What is the No, okay. I'm going to ask a question, but I already think I've answered part of it. What is the average price range of the home that you say you would represent in that area?
Well, anywhere from under 100,000 to in the area of 600,000 and 700,000.
And that's because you have a lot of the older property that's on the water that still is in the $100,000 range.
Not the ones that are on the water, Joe, that are under 100,000.
I mean, close to the water.
Close to the water. Inland is going to be under the $100,000 range, and then some of the newer waterfront homes in the $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 range.
Okay, how about like that strip of homes in Cocoa Beach that's on A1A that 40-mile speed zone in there that's right before you used to get the old Bernard Surf there. Those homes in there they're all mostly low homes. They're being replaced now by a lot of high-rise stuff.
Are you talking? Okay, so you're talking about on A1A directly? Are you northbound or southbound, Joe? Help me out.
No, it's a split road. You're on one side of it going north, on the other side going south.
Correct. Yes.
And there's a lot of homes on that median area.
Yes.
What kind of? And they're all look like a lot of them are pretty run down.
They're not necessarily run down, Joe. Some might like a lot of foliage around their houses, but they're not so much being replaced with condominiums so much. You see, we have zoning laws in just about anywhere that only allow you to put, if it's zoned single family, you can only put a single family home there. If it's zoned multifamily, in Cocoa Beach, you're allowed up to 10 units per acre.
Okay, but are those? If somebody was going to move to the area and they wanted to get really sort of close to the water, and they didn't have a lot to spend, what area of Brevard County would you recommend that they look at?
Well, are you looking to be at the water, the river or the ocean, Joe?
I was thinking the ocean. That's what I was thinking of.
Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach. You're going to be west of A1A generally, and then also in Satellite Beach.
Satellite Beach, you can still get a good buy?
Sure.
That brings another question to mind. With the increase in population and the decrease or the ingress into the available market, what is that doing to the cost of the homes? Is it driving them up or not?
Oh, definitely, it's driving them up. Low inventory, a lot of demand. That brings the prices up.
What's the quickest you've ever sold a home?
Joe, I listed a house. I was putting a sign in the yard, and some lady saw me put the sign in the yard. She followed me back to the office, and we wrote a contract. I can't do any better than that, Joe.
No, you can't do better. I was thinking that Terry and I bought a home in California, in San Diego, and when we bought the home, it was the first home we bought, and I thought, gee, I wonder if we'll ever be able to sell this. We sold it in a week's time. We put it on the market and it was sold in a week.
A lot of properties sell within a day.
Wow. You know, I mentioned earlier we were talking about risk, and this show really has a lot to do with the elderly, but we get elderly moving into certain areas, and there's a lot of risk. And do you what is there any kind of advice you could give to senior buyers that are moving into an area like Brevard County as to what areas you think they should be looking at?
Well, there's a lot of factors there. Of course, can they afford it? And how long do they think they're going to be in the house? And for some of the military people, close to Patrick Air Force Base or the VA clinic in Melbourne, these are important.
Do you find a lot of the people that come to Patrick still buy homes?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Why? I guess, the military's changed a lot since in the time that I've gotten out, but generally speaking, if you had quarters available, they tried to require the military to stay in the quarters.
Well, that billeting takes care of that for the most part, but they have very limited housing on the base. And if you're an airman service person that has a family, and they have very limited availability on base, sometimes they'll help you out with a rental. But, Patrick Air Force Base is a highly coveted duty station in the Air Force, and same way with the Coast Guard. These places being highly coveted, these people, after they get out of the service, they come back to the area.
I never heard that said. Why would it be? Because of the closest to the ocean? Is that why would it be coveted? Why?
I'm not sure. Well, look at our weather. It's not snowing, Joe. There's many factors that make it a highly coveted duty station.
Wow, I never really thought about that. Of course, and I should, because the church we go to, we have quite a number of retired military officers that have retired and come back here. You're right, Joe.
The weather brings them back too.
The weather, yeah.
And the hospitals at Patrick and the commissary, people want to be close to it.
Yeah. No, and I can understand that, because we live close to the base, and we like that very, very much. It's very handy.
Patrick Air Force Base is a very strategic base to South America. The likelihood of anything happening to it in the way of being defunded, or the chances are pretty slim that Patrick Air Force Base would ever be closed. Well,
they got that, and with all the other secondary missions that they have, and being as a backup for the Space Coast thing out here, as long as we got the Space Coast, then there's a pretty good chance that Patrick's going to be around.
Yeah, and it's very strategic to South America.
Yeah, I know. In looking at in selecting a realtor, one of the questions you had down was size of staff and what kind of assets a realtor can bring to the buy or sale of a home. What did you mean when you want to talk about something like that?
Well, between my wife Debbie and I, we've got over 40 years experience. Some people, because they're working with so many properties, they have to have a full staff to work on those properties. We're more of a hands-on group. We don't want to hand it off to somebody that may or may not understand, that didn't go into the house with us to talk to the seller or the buyer, that they know it sometimes there's breakdowns in communication, and we like to stay right with one-on-one as best we can with the buyer or seller.
As a realtor, as a guy that I sort of sense that you call yourself a hands-on realtor, do you look at things like the quality and the upkeep of maybe the I'm trying to think of the septic tank system?
Well, Joe, septic tanks are pretty much going away these days. There are still a few septic tanks, but the different aspects of the home, we pretty much insist that any buyer has a home inspection conducted on the property before they purchase it. And also with a seller, we suggest getting a pre-listing inspection. That way, if there is something that comes up that's wrong with the property, they can fix it and have it done, and more likely they could sell the property as is.
So what do you mean a pre-listing inspection? What is that?
A pre-listing inspection.
I misheard you. I thought you said pre-listing.
Well, and believe it or not, when you work with us at Veterans Realty of Brevard, if you're buying a home through us and you're a veteran or senior, or any of the trying to think of the word, first responder type people, police, medical, fire people, and school teachers. Don't forget the school teachers, Joe.
Okay. No, I don't want to forget them.
We will pay for your home inspection at closing.
You do what?
We will pay for your home inspection or your home warranty at closing.
Veterans Realty does that?
Yes, sir.
Oh, my gosh. Huh. there's a lot. Is one thing. We have 6 minutes and 50 seconds, and I always wait till the last minute, but I won't do that to you today. If somebody wants, I told people to get their pen and paper out. Give me a good phone number for people to reach you, Joe. Let's do it before the end of the show.
Very good, Joe. Thank you. Veterans Realty of Brevard is 321-868-1833.
1833. 1833. Okay.
868-1833, Joe.
I was trying to think where it was that number sort of. Well, the 33 hit me because I was born in 1933, not 1833, 1933. And don't laugh. My wife is in the studio and she's laughing because I said not 1833.
She wonders sometimes. She says.
She didn't say that. Gary, don't say anything, Gary. Okay. You know, folks. Sometimes I wonder about some of the things that we do talk about on the air because when I first met John Harper, John talked to me about the value of talk radio and the value of being able to connect with your listening audience. And if your listening audience perceived that the people doing the show had a good time doing the show, enjoyed getting the information out to the people, then generally speaking, you had the basis for a good show, Joe. And I think that if we can, as we started out earlier on the show, we've had an increase roughly of 20,000 people here in Brevard County, and that increase of 20,000 people is almost close to what you remember the population of Brevard County being at one time.
Right.
And it was small, but it has had extremely rapid growth. In fact, in the 29 years we've lived here, it's increased by 250,000 people.
Joe, what was it you were telling me about some of the sponsorship having gone away, the money that's going away from people like the Helping Seniors of Brevard?
Oh, what Joe's talking, folks, I've written several columns for the newspapers, and I've got one coming out. It should be out next Friday in Hometown News. I highly recommend you read it because it talks about the fact that seniors are the second largest number. We're actually out of a county of 568,000 people. We've got over half of them are seniors. Well, actually, 24.1% are seniors, qualify as senior status. But with the current Board of County Commissioners, they have voted to virtually eliminate all funding for senior programs, and that doesn't sound like it's a very serious thing, but it really is when you realize that most nonprofits operate pretty close to the margin. And nonprofit doesn't mean that you don't operate for pay. You do. You have to pay people because they have to eat and live just like the rest of us. So. But this act to eliminate funding for nonprofits throws more of the burden on organizations that are willing to pick up and help keep her. And you're one of the sponsors of this program, so because you recognize not only the value of people getting good real estate information, but you realize the value of people having resources to go to get the help they need.
So I would suggest that if anybody out there has any little extra that they could share with Helping Seniors of Brevard, they'd greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, we got. If you go to, you can go to our website, folks, helpingseniors.brevard.org, and you can find out about the 1951 Ford Victoria hot rod that A.J. Hires with Boniface Hires is actually given to us at no cost to us, folks. He's given us the car from his private collection. Contrary to whatever anybody might say to you, he gave the car to us. Donate, gave, free. And we're selling tickets now. We're going to be down with 5 guys tonight down in Palm Bay selling tickets on the car, but all the money goes to help people and pay for the work that we do. And that's why it's so important. And that's why it's important. And anybody that we have a lot of organizations to support seniors. If you want to be a sponsor for the radio or television shows, get your name in print, be able to get your information out. And like you have a column, Joe, it comes in Senior Scene Magazine. Senior Scene Magazine is read by roughly 40,000 people on the Space Coast. And it's a wonderful magazine, but the information you put in your 250 to 300 word column in there about every other month, it helps people become better informed about real estate, the market, what you should do, and you talk about the things that we talked about on the show, right?
Right, Joe. Maybe somebody out there doesn't need help themselves, but there's other people that need help, and you could possibly help them by giving to Helping Seniors of Brevard.
That's a great thing, and I thank you very much. The other thing, folks, you think about we're coming into the fall season, the football season, and there's so many things that are happening on the Space Coast, and you'll see a lot of. But if you do go to our website, you'll see the places that we're going to be taking the car to show us, so you can see it if you want to take a look at the car. The other thing you can do is those of you that are on your little typewriter all the time, you can take and Google FloridaCarShows.com, FLA carshows.com, all one word, and it gives you a beautiful spread which shows our car on the front page of a national magazine where, in fact, we had a ticket order yesterday from New York.
Joe, wouldn't it be great if somebody won the car and donated it back to the...
Well, it would, because...
And we could do it again?
That would be great. But, a lady that won the car last year after Mass at Holy Name of Jesus Church on Satellite Beach, she bought the ticket after church, and she won the car. So that's the end of the show. Thank you, Joe, for being with me today, and thank you, listener, for listening. We'll see you next week. Have a great, safe weekend. Bye-bye.